Your last movie was really a personal story to your family. When writing this movie, how was the process? Did you want to remove yourself from anything personal? Where did the inspiration for this come from?
It was kind of, well, both of the things that you just said were pretty accurate about how it came about. I mean, it is, in a way, personal to me. I mean, I've spent a lot of time around young people and in a day job of teaching standardized tests. So I spent time at high schools and colleges. And also a few years ago, my much younger sister came out to me. And so I suppose that's kind of what got me thinking about a story like this. But then the other thing that you said was trying to remove myself from it, and that's what really, I think that's the thing that kept me interested in this story, in that, it's just so far removed from my own personal experience and the kind of points of view that I'm asked to consider every day. So that was, I think that was the biggest draw.
Does anyone have questions? If you can hold your head high up so we can see you. I'll keep up there.
Yeah, there was such amazing chemistry between you three actors, and I wonder if you could talk about that process of creating that.
Sure. So when I first received the script, I loved the entire story, but Clifton actually made me really uncomfortable. He made me hella uncomfortable because it was so far removed from what I was going through in my life at the time. I wanted more authenticity. I wanted to not feel so, I guess, immature in a way. So I actually turned it down the first time. And Kieran was like, yo, I think we should meet, talk about the story. And we did. And he basically told me, like, yo, dude, if you're gonna be an actor, you need to be able to, like, step outside of yourself, and experience things that make you uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone, and he kind of just, like, I really absorbed that. And so, like, the scene with me and Dale, damn, even watching it now, this shit is intense. That shit is lit. But that was the third day of shooting was that scene. So
Day 2 of shooting, and then day 3.
Then
2 days, split over 2 days.
we were just getting to know each other. So that was like, it was extremely uncomfortable, obviously, in a way. But at the same time, I don't know, we kind of like got into a flow, and we kind of settled in, and after a while, I don't know, I guess from Clifton's perspective, I wanted to come at it with a lot of innocence. And inside of me, I didn't want to judge Clifton. I wanted to allow him to just kind of like whatever he was feeling in that moment, he was coming from a loving perspective. So in a way, I guess, I just got absorbed into the moment, and I don't know, we got through it.
You did a great job. Yes.
As far as chemistry goes, it was made very easy for me because they're both lovely people. I still would have, nailed it, but it would have been more work if I did my job. So that was really helpful to me. That scene particularly, I couldn't imagine doing with anybody else except for Mateo. And I've thanked him so many times that I'll do it for the rest of my life for making me feel so safe that day. It's kind of like Brianna talk.
So I got this script in when I was packing to go to Vancouver, and I stopped packing in the middle of packing because the script just blew me away. I fell in love with it, like the whole story. It's funny, I originally actually auditioned for Anne, but then, I auditioned for Sasha, and the more that I knew about Sasha, the more that I became to understand that she's the kind of person who lets everyone else's opinion affect her own opinion of herself, and I think that that's something that everybody alive can relate to. So the more I thought about it, the more excited I got about playing Sasha, and then, of course, Dylan's amazing, and beautiful, so it's easy to do. But yeah, no, the whole thing was great, and it was amazing that our chemistry was so great. I don't know, it was great from the get-go, though. I feel like, from rehearsal, we all got along, and yeah, it was a great experience.
Do you guys want to speak to the producers about, do the producers want to speak about finding the cast and maybe the
Yeah,
process of how to get them to have this great crime sketch?
I'm Ross. I produced the movie with Seth Kaplan, Dave Hunter right here. We didn't have a casting director because otherwise we wouldn't have a camera. So it was a team effort with all of us. Dave kind of started setting up a million auditions. We started just calling people that would take our calls and listen and say, hey, we think the script's pretty good. And thankfully, Karam's a pretty good closer, so when we get him in a room with people, they say yes. But, Dylan had auditioned for us on a movie that we made 2 years ago, and Dave had remembered her, and when we were bringing this up, Karam told this story the other night, but I'll do it for him now. Dave was like, what about this girl with Dylan Clue? She was so cool. And Karam was like, no, whatever, okay, whatever. And then Karam, a few days later, was like, oh, I just saw the show on Breakable Kimmy Schmidt. There's this girl on it. She makes all these amazing faces. I'm so into her. He's like, yeah, that's Dylan Clue. I've been told about it. So yeah, Dylan was just perfect. And Rihanna, when we saw her in the room with Dylan, we just knew that we got them together and we were like, let's see if this works. And it was so good. And as Mateo already said, he turned us down, so we just kept trying. But, it was just a long trial and error process, but we're so lucky to find it.
Here's what does your sister think of the show?
Yeah,
Well,
that's a good question.
That's a great question. I'll let you know when she sees it. I'll tell you this though, she did read the script, which I've tried to kind of get her interested in what I'm doing for a long time, or send her other scripts, and she sort of had a half-ass interest. But this time she read it all the way to the end, so I think it's a positive sign.
I see one all the way in the back.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about how you organize the plot in the film, because you kind of go back to certain points in the film a couple times, lead up some things, then you come back to it and reveal it to us. What were you thinking when you were organizing the structure of the film, and then later in the editing phase?
Well, that structure, to a certain extent, did come together in the editing phase. So initially, the movie was told in a still out of order way, but the main difference was that you didn't really get to know Clifton until much later in the film, and that's the way that it was written. And then bringing it together and editing it initially, and watching that first cut through, and watching it through with, we just showed it to a few people and a few friends. And what we came to realize was that the major issue with the movie was that because you got to know him so late, you couldn't really relate to what he was going, to his point of view. You saw the other people's points of view, but not his point of view. And so the editing process was, on the one hand, trying to figure out where to reposition those long scenes between the two of them. And that was on the one hand, and the other hand was just making sure that you just start off on the same footing with all the other characters as you do with Clifton, and then that just changed. That changed everything in terms of the way that you experience the movie. Now you kind of experience it through his point of view, I think, as well.
Would you share your thoughts on how you came up with the title?
Right. I find that titles it's either right when you have the idea, right when you're starting, or they just never happen. And luckily, initially I was just, I just had a placeholder, it was just the character's name. And then I thought First Girl I Love because it's, well, Kim's not here, so I can tell this. Kim Yutani is one of the senior programmers at Sundance, and she told me later, she was one of the first people here to watch the film, and right when she got the screener and said First Girl I Loved on it, she was like, ugh. and that was, right when she said, oh, I was like, yes, that's what I wanted. You would think that it's like about the first girl I loved. All right, I get it. It's just kind of a tired phrase, but you know, slap it on a different movie.
So I'm wondering, you know, obviously you touched on in a few places that consensual sex, you know, the first time, all of that. Did you nail that right away? That balance of, you know, where you leave people questioning in their own mind?
Hey, that scene, just like all the other scenes, has gone through several evolutions. We actually shot that whole bedroom scene over 2 days, and so we have a ton of footage of that. And so it struck me while I was editing it that you really could, with just deleting one line, one word, you can completely change the effect of that scene and, you know, how uneasy you feel or what, you know, when you're considering all the sides of it. So yeah, it was I would say it really went through 2 big evolutions. Initially, like I was saying, that first cut, it was really all about Anne's perspective, and then bringing in Cliff earlier, recutting certain scenes. I tried to just kind of go around the room and just show what was happening as opposed to, you know, kind of taking a side with the camera, if that makes sense.
You did a great job.
Yes.
How long did it take you to make the movie from writing the script and then finish?
Well, I think it's been actually rather quick by, well, the standards that I'm familiar with, trying to make independent films. I started writing it right after we finished shooting my previous movie, so that was maybe 2.5 years ago, is the first time I started writing the script. Again, which is, I think, pretty fast, but then, you know, I had all these other scripts I was thinking about, and then I started writing this one, and it just felt like the next move.
We have time for one more question.
I just want to say that this film was amazing. I wish it had been around when I was younger. But I just want to ask, like, what advice do we give to someone who wants to tell a similar story about, like, queer people and people who are, like, in the mainstream and, like, films like this don't exist. So what would you say to someone who wants to continue telling these stories?
Right. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
She was just saying, you know, that films like this, there aren't a lot of them out there, and how does one continue to tell stories like this, right? And I'll just tell you, you know, it's, I don't know how people will keep telling stories like this, but this one, it's just, I just felt like a certain, I know that it is very far away from my personal experience, but there's just something so kind of primal about it that I did feel very close to the main character. And so I guess if you are considering a story like that or writing a story like that, there are not those kind of barriers about getting financing and actors that existed 15, 20 years ago, still to a certain extent, at least in my personal experience, still to a certain extent exists today, but it's way easier to make this kind of film today. So I would just say, don't let the subject matter make you think that it's, you know, not universal or not commercial even, you know. Yeah.
What you do and what everyone did is you follow your heart and what you know is true inside, and they'll push you to make it happen.
I'd like to thank the Voyagers and Startup. Everybody's going to be